So on Saturday, the Bengals are going to try to do something that hasn't been done since I was in the 8th grade. And yes, kids, that was a long time ago. Going to try to win their first postseason game since January 6th, 1991. I was dating Kelly Rovner back then. She was pretty in over my skis. Anyway, back in the postseason for the 3rd time in 4 years, 4th time since 2005. And I know this is kind of getting to be old hat. I get it. Look, losing in the first round of the postseason is so 2011. 2009, 2005. At some point, you got to break through and win. But before we get to the coming week, let's look back. I think we need to appreciate this football team, not only for the tangibles, the 10-6 record, bouncing back after being down 3-5, all those things. This team saved Cincinnati sports. Remember October the 11th? Remember the Reds' postseason collapse? And remember the immediate aftermath? The Reds lose those 3 games at Great American Ballpark in the second week of October, and that was bookended by ugly loss to the Dolphins by the Bengals, brutal loss to the Browns by the Bengals. Right after that, UC football lost a couple of games. It looked like the last quarter of 2012 was going to be miserable. And fortunately, because of the Bengals, it wasn't. The last 2 months have been a lot of fun. This was a really fun team to watch this season. And they gave us something to be excited about, and they helped us, I think, at least a little bit turn the page from those 3 days of Great American Ballpark to something fun here the last 8 weeks of the NFL season. And so now we look ahead to the postseason. And I know for most of us, this year is ultimately going to be defined by whether the Bengals win in the playoffs or not. If they don't, as unfair as this might be, we're going to lump together this season with last, 2009, other postseason and big game failures. At some point, if you're going to take the next step, well, you have to take the next step, and the way you do that is by winning playoff games. I think all of us want this team to get to the point that we judge it by not whether they're playing in January, but whether they're winning in January and how often they're winning in January. And I think they've got a really good chance to do that. I think they do something better than any Bengals team I can remember. And I think they do something which gives them a puncher's chance against anybody they play in the postseason. And obviously that's going to be the Houston Texans on Saturday. They put quarterbacks on their backs. Bengals opposing quarterbacks have spent more time on their backs than most cheerleaders do. A team record amount of sacks. Matt Schaub was knocked on his ass a lot in the last quarter of the season. 12 sacks for the Texans, or against the Texans quarterback. And he threw a bunch of picks and only 1 touchdown down the stretch in the final 4 games. The Bengals take quarterbacks and neutralize them by sacking them, by hitting them. They've got a really good front 4 and a great defensive lineman in Geno Atkins. Other Bengals teams have had a lot of things they brought to the table. 05, explosive offense. 09, great running game, good defense. Last year, dynamic playmaker in A.J. Green, good defense. I don't think any of those teams had a defense as capable as this one and as capable of doing one thing and one important thing really, really well. We've seen it in the postseason so many times where a great quarterback gets neutralized by the fact that he's knocked down a lot. This is not the 3rd string of the Bengals faced last season, and the Texans do have a lot of offensive weapons. Maybe the most balanced team in the AFC field. But you knock a guy in his ass a lot, you limit his effectiveness. That's a rule for football, and frankly, I think it's a rule for life. Now, later on in the week, we'll talk about who's going to win the game, and, it's only Monday, and God knows if I say who's going to win now, whatever. But the biggest question for me throughout the course of the week, and there's a lot of things, the health of Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, how does that hover over the week? How Andy Dalton handles postseason game number 2 for him. Close game, Marvin Lewis, game management, replays, timeouts. How is that going to affect them? But there's one guy, and the Texans have a lot of really talented players on defense, but there's one guy who can take any offense out of what they want to do, and that's J.J. Watt. We saw it firsthand last season. Absolutely terrorized Andy Dalton, caught a pick 6, changed the game. This season, a near historic season for the defensive end, who went into the game on Sunday with a chance to set a sacks record. Didn't, but still, 20.5 sacks this year, and a guy who could just totally take a team out of what they're going to do offensively. If I'm Jay Gruden, and I think most of us can be happy that I'm not, if I'm Jay Gruden, I have spent a lot of time already thinking about how I'm going to keep J.J. Watt from doing what he does to disrupt offenses. I know that might not be the most, enlightening point ever. Clearly, you have to figure out a way to account for him when you play the Texans. But just like Geno Atkins can take a team out of what they want to do offensively, J.J. Watt can do that. And I think that's the thing I'll be thinking about as we start to turn the page towards Saturday. It's going to be a fun week. Bengals in the postseason. They've saved the fall. Can they prolong their stay in the winter? Tweet me at moegger1530. Tell me what you think. Or you could also email me in lieu of the fax, mo@espn1530.com.